very much. I'm told that this is needed for the camera, but I'm sure you can hear my voice. Yeah? All right. So thank you for the beautiful introduction, even though I wrote it myself, but anyway. But the first thing I'd like us to do, is we've been sitting down for a while. So let's get up and have a bit of a stretch, and then we can get started. Just a bit of a stretch. So this stretch, what I'd like you to do, I know some of us are still eating, and we've only, the jollof rice is still making its way all over the body. But I want you to see if you can spell your name, the first letter of your name with your body. I want you to, so that's a bit of a cheating. You have to move your body. First of all, for Sumaya, this is Sumaya, like that, like that, like that. So that's S. I just wrote S. I want you to move your body. Okay, yeah. I'd like you to move your body so that, you know, I'm not saying people do this. Okay, what is Mr. What is Mr. Madio? What is this spell? Okay. All right, let's have a seat, please.
Okay.
Okay, that's a nice one, man.
Now, in true Yoruba style, what I should start with is by doing the LOTT. Because the truth is, family violence is not laughing at all. It's a pretty heavy subject. And what we're trying to do is to talk about this in 45 minutes. It's something you need a day or two or more even. So, the first thing is to be aware of things that might come up for you as we're talking. I've tried to keep it, I've tried to put it in such a way that as much as we can, we will manage our responses that we might feel within us. Because everyone has a story that can be triggered at any time. So if you find that some of the stuff we might bring up in the course of talking, people sharing, things come up for you, what I would generally encourage you to do is that you can move away and just try and compose yourself, maybe at the back or outside, get a bit of air and then come back in or drink some water, because you never know. And because of that, another thing I'd like to say, even though this is being recorded and is in public space, obviously if you're sharing and you feel like what you want to share is something really personal, I would definitely encourage you to pull back in terms of the details and just be aware that this is something that is being shared in a public sphere. But if you're comfortable to share and you believe that it's something that can be potentially beneficial to other people, please go ahead and be generous in that way. So that's a couple of things I just wanted to point out. Now, when we talk about Yoruba cultural values and family violence, there's just a lot about it that, I mean, we could unpack in many different ways. But I thought I would start with I know the volume is a bit low, but if you can listen to what she's saying, that would be really helpful. So that didn't quite work out as I expected, but basically what I was hoping to do with that, if we had the volume, was to get us to hear the traditional Ewi that we, the Yoruba people, do. We speak and we render for a number of reasons. And part of what that does is that it allows us to start to connect with the ideas that are enshrouded in some of our traditions. So when you find someone doing the Ewis for a few different reasons, here she started by acknowledging the might of God, and she was naming his names in many different ways. And then she goes on to acknowledge different parts of Yoruba land, and she's basically paying tribute to a lot of the different parts of Yoruba land. And that's what she was doing there. And I thought that was a good way to get us to start talking about what we mean by Yoruba cultural value. So this is where I would love you to participate. Now, there's something I usually like to say at the beginning of any discussion or facilitation. For me, numbers are important, but it's more about the quality of what you're receiving that matters. So if you've come here today, that shows commitment. It also shows that you're willing to receive what is being said to you, and then you take what resonates with you and utilize it in a way that matters for you or for your life. So I'd really like you to participate in this. So let's start by looking at, when you talk about Yoruba cultural values, I've just picked two. I've picked the concept of roles, and when you talk about roles, you talk about you as an individual, and you talk about gender, men and women. So clear distinction. And then we're talking about respect, concept of respect as well. Now, the woman, part of what she was also doing in that erudition was basically she was showing and talking about different traits and qualities of different groups in the Yoruba land. So that's what she was doing. And I thought that automatically leads us to look at the concept of respect and to look at roles. So let's start with that for starters. What do you think when you talk about the role of a man or a woman in Yoruba tradition? What's the role of a man based on your own understanding? Mr. Obadina, it looks like you want to say something.
A man is seen as the head of the house,
yes,
the breadwinner. He is also the security for the house, so protects the wife and the children.
Okay, so a protector and a provider.
Yes.
Okay, good. Anything else? What about the woman? What's the role of the woman in Yoruba tradition? Which would be considered politically incorrect.
Yes, that's the Yoruba way. One way.
So the woman is kind of like the home carer, but it's kind of like using the word custodian. What do you mean there?
No, I wanted to say like the basic house girl that she owns them. She's the boss in terms of that. She owns like in our way, in our time. She owns the kitchen kind of. And this is where I call my office. So I'm in control of this. So what goes on in the house? Not really the main rules like house cleaning and stuff. She's in control. Like she's like the official boss in that capacity.
In that capacity. Thank you. Any other ideas and thoughts? Yes.
I think she's a keeper.
A keeper. Tell us a bit more about that.
I mean, the keeper is, I don't know, she has a lot of responsibility. I mean, it's a value, I think, and it's also a compliment for a woman to be called a keeper in terms of how they can hold everyone down.
I love the word you use when you say she's a keeper. I think what you might struggle with will be what is now starting to happen, which are trying to understand some of those clear distinctions that used to be very clear to us, as Mr. Baz was saying before. But because of the way the times are changing, more awareness, more concept of self, more integration of many global influences, and obviously migration across borders, a lot of things are now changing, and there's a lot of confusion about some of this. So we've talked about gender. What about self? Who is a person who is a Yoruba man or woman? We're not talking about gender now, we're talking about the individual. How would you describe yourself as a Yoruba person, as an individual? How is that defined? So if I said that a Yoruba man, so there are always these jokes around tribes in Nigeria where they'd say, oh, if you see a Yoruba man and two of them are fighting, they will never exchange blows because they'll just say, okay, move here. So there's always this idea.
Those are the negotiations.
Okay, well. Exactly. So there are all these ideas that the Yoruba person, the anatomy of a Yoruba person, or if you like, some of the characteristics of a Yoruba person is that they're typically friendly people, they're very loud, they do a lot of gesticulation, like if you see me talking, I'll hit my leg and my hand and click and all sorts of things. So there are some things that are considered to be associated with the Yoruba man or woman. But if you think about yourself and you say, I am like this because I am a Yoruba person, is there anything anyone can say about that?
I love my food.
Your food, you love your food, okay? Anybody could say that. Yoruba food. So food is a central part of your own Yoruba experience. Okay, great. Yes? They're religious. Okay, good. Mr. Ekene.
We are respectful
Yeah.
to elders, to people in authority, and even to our community.
So you would say that you as a person, that's something you would kind of associate. Of course, there will be other things as well, but there's something you could kind of associate to being a Yoruba person. Okay, great. So we've talked about a bit about self, we've talked about gender. Let's talk about systems. So we've got family, we've got the traditions, and we've got community. If you talk about Yoruba family systems, what would be some things that you would say you will find in a Yoruba household or Yoruba family as a value? What's something you would discipline? Great. Anything else? Oh, there are many. Education. Okay, so in the family, when you talk about a system, religion, education, discipline, these are very important. Yes. Kinship, fantastic. Then you talk about traditions, they're kind of interconnected. So when you think about a Yoruba tradition, what's something that is a typical Yoruba tradition that becomes a system? Lago lago wambe. Okay. All right, that's an option.
We like partying.
Partying. So which is the lago lago? Anything else?
We are loud.
We're loud. Okay. What I want you to think about though would be tradition. What's a Yoruba tradition that you can think about? Okay. So the appellations we use for people. What about in our body language? You know how we do that? And ballet. These are all ways that you talk about traditions that then depict a certain way of being as a Yoruba person. And that takes us to community as well. What's something that you would say, if you come to a Yoruba community, that you are likely to find? Party. Okay, I'm kind of getting this sense that somebody likes a lot of partying in this place. Because it's mentioned it like 3 times now. Mr. Akamo, eh? Dressing, beautiful. What is it about dressing?
Everybody wearing the same type of clothes.
Okay. So there is the anko concept. Ashwebi, Ogeshiche. So we're stylish. Yes. We love to dress up. Where we wear vibrant colors. We like to appear grand. That's how. So if you see the woman when she ties the gele, it's a phenomenon. Although these days they're doing all these automatic things. All right. Can we listen, please? There are a few points I want us to listen. All right. They're in the UK.
Because if he was in Nigeria, we would have chopped it off already.
I know. Okay. So, we will just make do with the sound, but I know many of us are familiar with this. What's happening here? When you put it in the context of Yoruba values, and we're talking about domestic violence, what's happening here? You know, we already started to discuss earlier about discipline, this and that. What's happening in this scene? We know it's a prank, but there are a few things that came up in this particular video.
The father was initially disappointed.
So there's disappointment. Good. Anything else? What else did we notice there? Apart from the fact that it's such a funny video, I don't know how many times I can watch it and I won't stop laughing.
One thing that stood out for me, I mean, the father wanted to take a punitive measure.
Yes.
Because the boy did something. Was this supposed to do?
Yes.
As per the dictate of our code.
Yes.
He wanted to do something. That thing was supposed to do.
Yes.
You're not allowed to do that. As a Yoruba man, he felt the need to just do justice, and the way to do justice was to melt out a punitive punishment.
Yes, and he's familiar with the fact that he's in a country where he might be
Prosecuted.
yes, he might be prosecuted for it, because he was saying, look, I'm going to deal with you, then I'll deal with the law. That's basically what he was saying there. But there are other things that happen there as well.
Cultural disappointment.
Yes, there's cultural disappointment.
Respect. Even the boy still respect the father.
Yes.
I mean, the way it's his explanation, even when he was so afraid that, okay, my dad is going to punish me for things and things.
Yes, so
If that happened here in Australia, in my definition is pregnant.
yes,
Absolutely respecting the father can do it.
exactly. So there are a few different things there, and I thought it's something to just hold on to. I don't know. This one, I don't think you really need to hear anything much per se. that are being done in cult communities and some of these other communities that are around, especially people of cultural and linguistically diverse backgrounds, essentially the data is not really coming in. But what we're finding is that there are many people that are finding themselves in family courts facing issues of abuse because they didn't understand. I remember there was somebody who I used to know back then. She lost 2 of her kids. She's from another African community because in the language, like in Yoruba we might say, or I will kill you. That's what it translates to in English. It's more of an exaggeration of the degree of punishment you're going to get. It's not a literary meaning. So in their language, there's something similar. But she took it to another level because she would usually show the children a weapon in the kitchen, something that became a weapon. So the kids were scared. They went to school one day and they were looking very worried and they told the teacher, I'm scared, my mom is going to kill my big sister, and that was how the process started, and she eventually lost the kids. Wow. Yeah, she did. So the reason I'm talking about this is, that seems like an extreme case. But some of us as parents, so I'm even just talking about children now, some of us as parents might say, look, if you do X, Y, Z, I'll belt the living daylights out of you. And in the process, yes. And in the process, what will happen is, because the child is so intimidated, the child might hide any signs, because to follow up with the belting, the parent might say to the child, if you tell anyone, you know, and things like that. There's a lot of all kinds of memes and things around it, but this is a pretty serious thing. Now, when you now talk about the partner violence, you think about going back to roles. My husband is not my father. But then in Yoruba tradition, how do we define husband? No, not even Okomi. Baba ẹ̀ olówó orí ẹ̀. So you see all of these ideas. So all of these ideas, they feed a perception of the roles that we have. So if a man, I watch Yoruba movies, I don't have a lot of patience for them. Sometimes I watch 5 minutes and I had enough. But what I see a lot that happens in these movies is that, oh my goodness, the ideas that drive our thoughts and our behavior is unbelievable. So I want to invite you just really quickly, some of the things you've heard about men or women. So you might hear someone say, oh, you know women, they're not smart. Or they might say, oh, you know men, they are, you know, they can't, it's PG, so I can't say that. You know, but they might say things about their perception of men and perception of women, and this now informs the beliefs and the behavior. So this is really important. Just really quickly, think about some things you've heard or you yourself have said. Men are the people here. I think, how many of us women? I think we're just about 4 women here. So this gives us an amazing opportunity.
Not in Australia.
So I really invite you. Look, we don't want to spend the day here and just listen out of courtesy and not go away with things that at least get us to reflect, maybe even change some behaviors. Because as soon as there's a mind shift around a belief that we have, it can automatically start to inform our behavior. So this is really important. So tell me some things that you've heard men describe women as. It doesn't matter, there's no right or wrong answer, it's just what we believe. Yes?
Sometimes believe that women are very good.
Yes. So very naive. Yes, anything else?
I mean, do you?
At times some men believe that women are very evil, you know.
Yes.
Sometimes they believe that they're very smart.
Yes.
And they pretend to be like.
Yes. So you hear things like, oh, you know, women only know money. Or you might hear things like, oh, you know, women are not, you know, they don't have a lot of energy or strength, you know.
Emotionally unstable.
Why are you saying it so well like that?
From experience.
I didn't say that. But the issue is that, no, but it's very true. That's one of the big ones. That's actually one of the big ones. And we're not saying that the constitution of a woman completely goes against certain perceptions. No one is going after any isms or anything. It's more about how that becomes the only way with which a woman is now perceived, or the only way with which a man is now perceived. So if there's any altercation between you and your wife or your partner, as you know, we're being taught to be saying these days, if there's anything happening in that space, what will happen is automatically the belief is triggered. Maybe your wife, and I've heard people say things like, oh, you know, you can't trust a woman, or you can't trust a man. So automatically, if a man comes home and the story does not add up, it means that he's fooling around. And there's no history, there's no pattern. It's not like she's found anything with him. But because there's a belief system there already, that's what she will automatically assume. Same thing with the men. Men might say, oh, you know, women, they can't be trusted with money. That one is another big one. So they might say, go hide your bank accounts. If they're talking with their friends, go and hide your bank account. Don't tell them the real things. You know, go and start a business somewhere and give it to your brother. Don't trust it, because after I die, I don't know what she's going to do with my wealth. So once that belief system is there, it automatically feeds into the behavior. But the one that we're now talking about with regards to violence, when a man assumes that his wife is like a child, so if she there goes against anything he doesn't agree with, he takes his belt and starts to hit her. Because in his mind he thinks, I'm the provider, I'm the protector, I'm her Lord. We even hear men saying that. Say, when I paid your right price, I bought you, I own you. There's nothing that you are except I decide. So everything about that, what does it boil down to? Power and control. So, and that is what then feeds the violence. So if the woman dares to even go outside of that, there's a problem. In the same vein of when there's issues with a lack of trust in the relationship, and the woman is starting to say, look, if you won't give me rest, you will never have rest. So there's always constant violence and arguments and problems in the house. So it boils down to that. And the effect of that, both on children and young people, is a whole lot of things. So many people will say things like, oh, you know, when I was younger, I used to get boxed in the ears, or somebody will, you know, my father used to slap me, or they'll describe some really horrific things that they'd go through when they were young that is clearly very, very abusive beginning. And then they'd say things like, oh, but look at me today, I'm really steady and stable and nothing's happening. To some extent, you can develop some resilience over the years, but oftentimes something is left behind. There's no two ways about it. It's just a question of when we now become maybe grown and the personal work we do on ourselves that can then allow us to maybe process it or cope with it, or just basically engage with it in a way that allows us to continue through life without being beaten down by it. But many people who later on take on behaviors, or you just see them that, this person gets annoyed so easily, this person has a rage. Some of it is a result of domestic violence. It's just that the environment can force us. So some of us grew up in Nigeria, and the environment that we grew up in, different types. Some people grew up in really nurturing environment. They're cared for. It's not even about wealth. You can find a family living in what you would describe as a really impoverished, but when they talk to the child, they might say, oh, well, mommy, wow, show you how you call me. The mother will be referring to the son. They will rub their head, they sing to them, they kiss them. So that idea that, oh, it's just a Western thing to be close to your child. No, not exactly. The Yoruba tradition, we will see through history too how affection is expressed. So, but when you say, oh, that makes me weak as a man, or you say, oh, don't go around showing all these kids, all these things, because they will not respect you. It boils down to what we understand about the concept of affection and how we express that affection in a way that fits with our own tradition and culture. So this is really important. These are some of the many different things that people experience. You might find a child just misbehaving in school, and you won't know that maybe it's the argument, constant argument, that you're having in your home that is causing it. You hear people saying things like, oh, but at least it doesn't hit you. Oh, he just touched down on you. That doesn't matter. You'll be all right. I'm all right. About just on Nigerian. You know, so they kind of minimize it. They don't allow you to, be able to really express how or what it takes from you. Or things like, you might hear a man say, how can a woman claim that her husband raped her? Oh, I've got little ones here. Anyway, I will quickly skim over that one. But that idea, because they say, I own her, I paid her bride price, how dare she? But missing the point of the fact that there is forceful. When you talk about consent, we're not saying go write a document or a contract to decide. We're saying to have a loving conversation that is negotiated, where a woman has a right to say, not tonight. She doesn't need to come up with an excuse. She just says she doesn't want to tonight. But in a situation where the man automatically says, how dare you? How dare you? You don't have a right to that. That is where the rights are already being trampled upon. Same thing with kids. We forget. So there's often this idea that you hit a child and the child is crying.
So what if the woman does that to possibly frustrate the man or abuse the man as a job, not tonight, again and again and again? Is that
there's a whole conversation around it. And I'm conscious that we're not going to make it about that. I only mentioned it as instruments of control that is used. But one thing that is important to respond to that is it can be done both ways. But why the 90%, even statistics show it, that DV is more perpetrated by men is because of the obvious. A lot of the systems are created in such a way that the man has power and control. And when power and control is not used responsibly, what will happen? It will be abused. That's what it means. So there are just a few different things. So a child, you hit a child and the child is crying, saying, the child is in pain. And you're telling the child not to cry. Say, why are you crying? I will give you something to cry about. And there are many kids that will testify to that. So they can't even, so they're in pain and they don't even have permission to even express that pain. So it's something that is piled upon. My son came the other day and he said something around, my teacher was shaming me, not him. So I was shaming someone. I said, what did the teacher say? The teacher said something like, oh yeah, right. Something as though making fun of a student that didn't know something. There's a way the teacher said it. I said, okay, shaming. And we processed it. But in my head, I'm thinking how different the times are. That he feels that because the teacher did not agree with his own thinking, there's a degree of shaming there that he can automatically claim affects him emotionally. So, but these are things that needs to be negotiated with. So there are many beliefs. I'm conscious of time, and I know we've had a long day. Everyone is tired. But there are a few things to just think about in terms of the beliefs and behavior, some of which we talked about. But one thing that is important is, if we are taking anything away tonight, this is really important. I would definitely encourage us, when you have a moment to yourself, to think about what are the beliefs you have about yourself as a person. What about the position you have? So if someone is able to describe the relationship they have with their partner as a partnership without feeling insecure about what that means, and they're able to engage with it in a way that allows them to say, okay, there's a partnership here. What's wrong with that? But in a partnership, do we agree that somebody can take leadership role in an area that they have the capacity to have that leadership role? Or are they able to say, okay, let's keep negotiating this, but ultimately, because in our tradition, the man is the head of the home, the boss stops at his door, do we agree that this is something we can work with? And then you work with what works for your family, but not something that just allows you to assume authority even when you're not able to and claim rights and without giving back the responsibility that are required. So this is really important. So have a think about it, your personality, position, the power you have, the place and your purpose. And then about others. What do you think about other men? So if a man says to you, oh, do you know that, as they say in Yoruba, yeah, kuma dana for me for the past so days. She hasn't cooked for me past. Really? Chase her out. careful now, go and get a younger one. They say go and get a small one, go and get a small wife or something. She will learn her lesson. Relieve her of her duty. Send her a helper. I know. So taking it a bit personal. So think about what your thoughts are with regards to men, women, children. If you believe that children are meant to just be controlled, that they don't have a voice, then clearly it will determine how you engage with your children. You don't have time. But this is such an adorable young man that is talking. Okay, let's see. It's just 2 minutes. It's just so low. Okay, I think I'm going to skip it. Should I? Because of time? Okay. So let's now start rounding up. So then I just found 1 or 2 proverbs that I felt gives credibility and substance to some of what we're talking about a bit more. So the first one is what? How do you look at Yoruba? Okay. So I know some of our Yoruba elders are here, so don't judge me too harshly. We shall put it down, you can understand it. But the point is, this is such a very, very important concept when you talk about trying to understand what our values are and how that can help in terms of either reducing violence or shifting our attitude towards it or just having more respectful relationships. So if we understand that, you can't give what you don't have. Okay, explain yourself, sir. Go ahead, please.
If you don't have money, you can still give the money you don't have.
How?
Credit card is
You still don't have it though. Sorry?
However, you have the credit to give. You don't have the credit.
Exactly, so you have it anyway.
Get high five from here. All right. Adio. So, Ben. So, here, what's really important, if you don't have love within you, love for yourself, respect for yourself, how are you going to give it to any member of your family? Least of all the people you work with, somebody at the counter. What you might do is to just conform and comply. You're not going to really express love because you don't even have enough love in yourself. What's the second one? And so, it's all okay. Yes. So what we're saying here, when you're talking about, say for example, child upbringing, is essentially patience, understanding that the work needs to be done. So if we're in a hurry to bring up our children in a certain way, especially in an environment that is very different from the environment that we've known, clearly what will happen is if we do not use that proverb to kind of regulate the way that we're parenting, we're going to damage them before we even get a chance to enjoy the value that they bring. This is the last one for this one. So again, this is about child upbringing. So which brings us to the concept of the violence as well. So you're trying to bring up a child and you're trying to discipline them and you're trying to, it's almost always such a challenge to know how to decide to what extent to punish a child or to deter them from a behavior. So these are things that is really important to keep in mind. Now this is okay. my house this morning. So I'm not going to say who is responsible, so they don't say, Mom, you went to shame us. When I saw it, I said, oh, fantastic. This is a teachable moment. I'm going to take a photo and come show you.
Did you have a party last night?
Sorry?
Did you have a party last night?
No.
How many kids have you got?
3.
Big boys.
Okay. Now, let me explain a bit about this. Typically, this is an issue in our home. They are amazing children. May God continue to bless them and bless all of us. But when it comes to chores and consistency, completely different worlds apart. So it's not that they will not do it. They just want to do it at a pace that is convenient for them. Now, how do you use the kitchen if you have this? You can't. So most of the time, we're always working towards how to have that consistency. This is an exceptional day, actually. It's not usually like this, but we have had times where you would have plates up to a point. So if it was the way I was brought up, that's just the end of that story. But exactly, it can't happen. It's an anomaly. This is the sort of thing that will never happen. But what I have had to learn is how to navigate the worlds that we're in now, and how to understand some of the challenges of bringing children up in a place where we don't even have extended communities, where an uncle or an auntie can say, why are our plates still in the sink? Get up and go and wash them. So if it is just the father and I that are, telling, most of the time the mother, saying, after a while, especially when the young men, it's challenging. But I believe in miracles. This one is on my fridge. This is one of my fridge magnets. Because what has now happened is this. So this happened over about an hour later, this morning. So I got my clean kitchen. What if in that process, I fought with them, I quarreled, I'm shouting all over the place, which by the way I do. But if that becomes our normal, then we will not have space for any other kind of interaction except shouting and fighting and complaining and nagging. And before we realize it, they've left the home. So it's just my choices we're talking about now. This is one of the things hanging in my kitchen as well. To love generously, we have to decide what that means for each of us. Either it's with our partners or with our children. So this is really important. This one has been there for years. This is actually where our story begins. And if we have that opportunity with our children, or when we were children, our life started in a certain way, where we have a chance to do something about it now. This one's on my favorite one. It's hanging in my kitchen. Have a look, my brothers. Look very well. My sisters, go get one of this. This is hanging in my kitchen. Sorry? I can send the details to you. Because what is this serving me? What is reminding me is some of what I am, what I do, what I bring, and whether I receive that recognition and acknowledgement or not, I know some of what I do. And that's the sort of thing that allows us to have a more balanced kind of engagement, where you can say, if your husband comes and says to you, oh, you haven't done anything all day, really? I haven't? Okay. And then you decide what happens next.
But that's also the tool.
Yeah? I don't know about that one. Let everybody go and get their own hand in. So this is, as we finish up, this is about one or two of the last slides. These are, I've written my own sort of mantra in a sense. Mi o mo se, mo nko se ni. So we are always in process. We are always learning. And these are some key things that we need to think about. We talk about faith. So we have hope that if things are not good today, they will become better tomorrow. We talk about fortitude. So we develop the grit to face some of the challenges that happen. But that is not to say we put up with a violent environment and we stay there until it becomes so toxic and potentially very harmful to us. We care. That's very central, because the minute you stop caring, that's pretty much the breakdown of that family. We communicate. There are many ways we communicate. We speak, we sing, we dance, we dress. We use many different ways to communicate, but it's important that we communicate. Sorry?
We cook, give them food.
We cook, exactly.
Silent as well. That's a kind of.
That's also, exactly, that's also to communicate.
God, that's the most horrible word.
You can be silent if what you're doing in that moment is to cope with what is happening or to keep yourself safe, but not to be silent because it condones violence.
Yeah, that's what.
So this is really important. Grace. Let us recognize the grace that God's put in our life. This is very important. When things are very hard and dark, it can get really dark, and it's difficult to see that. Let us have that, which will now lead to gratitude, because when we're looking at a partner or a child or somebody in our lives that we're in the family with, it's very easy to see most of what they're not good at, and we stop seeing the things that they're actually good at. And then we keep growing. So you don't say, oh, I've already been formed in Nigeria. There's nothing else to change. There's nothing else to develop. Why should I even bother? They're the children. They need to change. No, actually, we need to learn, unlearn, and relearn. This is really important. We need to get help. If we need to get help, there are lots of things out there. I know that one of the challenges for us as people of color, Nigerians, Yoruba people, is to have culturally appropriate help, because sometimes when you go to these places, they don't really get it. It's very black and white. Oh, so you spoke down to your child like this, then you're a very abusive person. Rather than engaging with some of the issues to understand what's creating that environment and how can we best serve this person. And healing is really important. Many people are going about with bleeding wounds, traumas that have not been attended to. And when you don't attend to those traumas, you are definitely going to bleed on the people you love. And sometimes the scars that we carry within us, they seem like they're healed, but they're not. All it takes is a little trigger. Your child says something to you, it triggers a memory in your head, you start hitting the child, and you're not even responding to what's happening in the moment. You're responding to maybe 20 or 30 years ago. So you need to heal. Connection is really, really key for us. The Yoruba culture, we've mentioned the connection is very, very important. We love to connect with people. We love conversations. We love to form friendship. That's one of the things we're known for. And community feeds into that as well. Thank you for your attention.